I'm Derek. I'm 52. And I paid for a wedding I wasn't invited to. I know how that sounds. Melodramatic, bitter, like one of those old men who turns a family disagreement into a lifelong grudge. But I swear to you, I never meant for it to end like this. I didn't go looking for revenge. I'm not the teach them a lesson kind of guy. I was a single dad who gave everything I had to raise my daughter after her mom walked out when she was 4. I did the ponytails for kindergarten. I packed her lunches. I worked overtime to make sure we could afford piano lessons because she wanted to play like the girls in the movies. I gave her everything. Maybe too much. Her name's Emma. She just turned 27. She's always been bright, sharp as a tack, that one. Headstrong. Beautiful like her mom, but with a steelier edge. When she was little, people used to say she was an old soul. But as she got older, that old soul turned into something colder. Maybe it was the teenage years. Maybe it was the money. Or maybe I just refused to see what was right in front of me until it was too late. I run a custom cabinetry business. Modest, but successful. I started it when Emma was in middle school, and over time, I grew it into something stable. I'm not rich, but I'm comfortable. Comfortable enough to help with college, pay for her first car, and offer to cover her wedding when she got engaged last year. That was my promise to her. You worry about the dress and the flowers. I'll handle the rest. And I meant it. Every father dreams of walking his daughter down the aisle. That's the day you wait for. The one where everything you've done, all the sacrifices, all the sleepless nights, feels worth it. It's the payoff. So when she called me up one night last winter, voice shaking with excitement, and said, "Dad, we picked a date," I felt that surge of pride and purpose. June 10th, a Saturday. Perfect timing. She and her fiancé, Colin, wanted something classy but outdoorsy. So we found this gorgeous vineyard estate about an hour out of town, with an open terrace and flower-strewn archways that looked like something out of a fairy tale. It cost a small fortune, but I was all in. I put down the deposit, booked the catering company, even fronted extra for a string quartet she'd seen on TikTok and absolutely needed. Every time she came to me with a new request, I nodded and pulled out the card. Because that's what dads do, right? I don't have anyone else. I never remarried. My own parents passed a few years ago. Emma is my whole world. And that's the part that makes this all so hard to swallow. Because I didn't see the shift. Not right away. It started small. Little things. I'd ask about the guest list, and she'd brush me off with, "Oh, Colin's handling that." I offered to help with decorations, and she said, "Actually, my future mother-in-law has it covered." One day I showed up to the venue to check on something with the coordinator, and Emma wasn't there. She'd rescheduled the meeting without telling me. Sorry, Dad, must have slipped my mind. I kept chalking it up to wedding stress. Brides get flustered. People get overwhelmed. No big deal. But then came the florist consultation. Emma had begged me to attend because she said she wanted my opinion. I showed up early, latte in hand, and waited over an hour. No show. When I finally texted her, she replied, "Oh shoot. Thought I told you we moved it to Friday." That was the third time something like that had happened. Each time, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Each time, she gave me less of herself in return. Still, I didn't complain. I kept paying the invoices. I figured maybe she was just trying to assert her independence. Maybe she didn't want me hovering. Maybe she was trying to prove she wasn't Daddy's little girl anymore. I told myself all of that. I swallowed every snub with a smile. Until the tux fitting. I'd been asking about it for weeks. Her fiancé, Colin, was already fitted. The groomsmen were scheduled. But every time I brought it up, "Hey, when should I go in for mine?" She'd dodge the question. "Oh, let me check with Colin. I think we're doing things a bit differently." Eventually, she told me they were going for a more casual look. No suits for the dads, just button-downs. I didn't love the idea, but I played along. It wasn't until I bumped into Colin's dad at the hardware store that I found out he'd been fitted weeks ago for a full custom tuxedo. That one stung. I went home that night and just sat on the couch, staring at the wedding binder I'd been keeping for months. Tabs for vendors, seating chart, budget, color-coded Post-its, notes on timelines. I'd been so involved in the beginning, so present, and slowly, I was being erased. Still, I didn't want to believe anything bad. Not about Emma. But then something happened, something small, almost insignificant, but it stuck with me. We were having lunch at this little cafe she loves, going over the wine list. She was distracted, tapping her phone, half listening. I asked her if I should prepare a toast for the reception. She looked up and said, "Oh, we're actually not doing speeches." That hit me like a punch in the gut. "No speeches?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. She shrugged. "It just slows everything down. And we wanted to feel more like a party, not a ceremony." I nodded, said I understood. But inside, something twisted. No speeches. No toast. No tuxedo. No meetings. No fittings. No involvement. I was paying for a wedding I was no longer welcome at, and I didn't know it yet. That was the beginning of the unraveling. I could feel something shifting, like the floorboards creaking beneath your feet before the drop. And yet, I still didn't know how deep the betrayal went. Not yet, but I was about to find out. And when I did, everything changed. It was about 3 weeks before the wedding when I realized I was being treated like a walking wallet. That's not bitterness talking. That's not some wounded pride or old man paranoia. It's just the truth. You don't always notice it when it's happening gradually, one forgotten text at a time, one dodged question here, a brushed-off comment there. But the signs had been stacking up for months, and I just hadn't put them together. Or maybe I didn't want to. Because the alternative meant accepting something I wasn't ready to face. That my daughter, the little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest while I hummed old Springsteen songs, didn't see me as part of her life anymore. Just part of the budget. The final straw didn't start with anything dramatic. It started with an Instagram post. It was a Thursday evening. I'd just gotten home from a job site, still covered in sawdust and paint flecks. My knees ached. I cracked open a beer and opened my phone, mostly out of habit. I wasn't trying to snoop or check up on Emma. I just wanted to see the newest pictures she'd promised me of the centerpieces. I figured she'd posted something from the florist's mock-up. Instead, I saw a photo from a bridal shower I didn't know had happened. The caption read, "So blessed to be surrounded by the most amazing women in my life. Thank you all for making this day so special. Couldn't have done it without you." There were at least a dozen people in the photo, all dressed in coordinated blush tones, standing under a balloon arch in a decorated garden. Her future mother-in-law was front and center. Her bridesmaids, cousins, friends, even my ex-wife, who hadn't spoken to Emma in years until she heard there was a wedding to be seen at. I wasn't there. I hadn't even known it was happening. And I know what you're thinking. Maybe it was a no guys allowed thing, right? Except Colin's dad was in the background of one shot, helping carry in a stack of gifts. Her uncle was playing cornhole with one of the groomsmen in another. And the kicker? The venue? It was the same vineyard I'd booked for the wedding. They'd held the bridal shower on site. Without telling me, I sat there for a long time, just staring at my screen. I didn't even blink when my beer tipped over and started soaking into the carpet. I wasn't just excluded. I was deliberately excluded. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept scrolling, kept seeing the comments. People gushing about how gorgeous the shower looked, how amazing her in-laws were, how hands-on her future family had been. And then one comment hit like a knife to the chest. "So sweet of Colin's parents to make this happen." Wait, what? I'd been paying every invoice that came in. I'd written the checks, signed the contracts. But her future in-laws were taking credit now? At 2 a.m., I finally worked up the nerve to call Emma. I didn't expect her to answer, but she did, sounding half asleep and annoyed. "Dad? Everything okay?" I tried to keep my voice calm, but I couldn't hide the edge. "When was the bridal shower?" She paused. "Last Saturday." "What? You didn't think I'd want to be there?" Another pause. "It was just for close friends and family." I blinked. "I am family." She sighed, and I could picture her rubbing her temples, like I was the one being difficult. "Dad, I didn't think you'd want to come." It was kind of last minute. Last minute. There were hand-painted signs and custom cupcakes with her initials on them. That wasn't last minute. That was planned. "You used my venue," I said. "Did you at least check with the coordinator? What if it messed with the wedding setup?" "It didn't," she snapped. "Everything was fine." There was a long silence. I don't know what I expected her to say. An apology? A laugh? Some kind of explanation? But all she said was, "Are we done here? I'm really tired." And just like that, she hung up. That was the first time I felt truly replaced. Not just forgotten. Replaced. I started noticing other things after that. The catering invoice had a secondary contact listed now, her mother-in-law. The photographer emailed me asking if I was still the point person or if he should follow up with Colin's family. The string quartet? Yes, the one I paid extra for, texted to confirm the new rehearsal date. New rehearsal date? I called Emma again. straight to voicemail. So I called the coordinator. And that's when the floor dropped out. "Hi, Derek," she said, a little too chipper. "Everything's coming together beautifully. The new date is perfect. So glad they moved it up. It's going to be stunning with the early summer blooms." "Moved it up?" I said slowly. "What are you talking about?" A pause. "Oh, I thought you knew. Colin and Emma rescheduled to May 27th. Didn't they tell you?" May 27th. 2 weeks earlier. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. "Is everything okay?" she asked. I mumbled something about needing to double-check my calendar and hung up. That's when I lost it. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the wall, feeling like someone had taken a bat to the side of my head. It was so deliberate, so calculated. She hadn't just excluded me from a bridal shower or pushed me to the sidelines. She had rescheduled her entire wedding behind my back. On my dime. Why? Why would she do that? I must have looked like a ghost because even my dog, Baxter, stayed away from me that night. I just sat there, turning it over and over in my head. What had I done to deserve this? Had I been too strict when she was younger? Too soft? Too present? Not present enough? I went back through every text, every email. I checked my calendar. Emma had been vague about the dates lately, always saying, "We're still locking things in," or "We're trying to make sure it works for everyone." I'd assumed we were still on for June 10th. Every invoice was under that date. Every vendor was prepped for that timeline. Except apparently, they weren't anymore. Colin's family had quietly taken over, and Emma had let them. It was that night I remembered something she'd said back when she first got engaged. I'd asked her about her budget, and she'd laughed and said, "Honestly, I just want a pretty wedding. I don't care about the details." At the time, it seemed innocent, naive. Now, it felt like a red flag I should have paid more attention to. She didn't care about the details. She just wanted the show. And now she had it. Without me. But here's the part that still keeps me up at night. I don't think she ever planned to tell me. Not after the reschedule. Not after the vendors had been shifted. I think she was hoping I'd just keep sending checks, trusting her. I think she figured I'd find out afterward. That I'd be hurt, sure, but it would be too late to do anything. And by then, the photos would be posted, the videos edited, and I'd be an afterthought. Just a name on a receipt. That was the night everything changed for me. Up until then, I'd been trying to be the bigger person, the supportive dad. I kept hoping she'd come around, that this was all just wedding stress, and she'd snap out of it. But that night, something in me snapped instead. I stopped being sad, and I started getting angry. Because this wasn't just about a wedding anymore. This was about respect. This was about dignity. This was about a man who had given everything he had to a daughter who now saw him as nothing more than an open wallet and a background prop. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not without understanding exactly what she'd done. Not without consequences. The week after I found out Emma had changed the wedding date without telling me, I went silent. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't even open her messages when they started trickling in a few days later. At first it was just a couple of casual updates. Catering menu finalized. Or sent my dress to the tailor. As if nothing had happened. Then came the just checking in texts. And then the guilt bait. "Are you mad at me?" Followed by, "You've been weird lately, Dad. Can we talk?" Each one made my jaw clench. But I didn't answer. I needed space. Not just from her, but from the entire mess I had allowed to grow around me. Because I wasn't just mourning the wedding. I was mourning my role in her life. I had spent years being a father who showed up, who worked hard, who didn't date again after her mom left because I thought Emma needed all of me. I built everything around her. And somehow, that had turned me into a background character in my own story. The realization hit like a slow-moving train. I didn't know who I was without her needing me. For the first few days, I barely left the house. I'd go to work, come home, heat up leftovers, and sit on the porch with Baxter curled up at my feet. I wasn't watching TV or reading or doing anything productive. I just sat, letting it all sink in, feeling hollow, feeling stupid. How had I not seen this coming? The worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was the feeling that I had raised someone who could do this to me. There was one night, maybe 4 or 5 days into the silence, where I cracked. I had just opened the envelope from the florist, confirming a final invoice for an arrangement I hadn't even agreed to. The flowers were no longer white roses and eucalyptus, like Emma had originally planned. They'd been changed to blush peonies and wild orchids. Different look, different date, different everything. I stood there in the kitchen, invoice in one hand, beer in the other, and suddenly I dropped both and grabbed the trash can and just flipped it, tossed the whole thing across the room. Baxter jumped and barked. I yelled, just one loud, guttural sound that didn't even sound like a word. Then I sat on the floor, surrounded by a mess of receipts and peanut butter lids and old envelopes, and I cried. I hadn't cried in years. But I did that night. Not like a movie cry, either. It was ugly. My whole body shook. My nose ran. I must have looked like a wreck, sitting there in my jeans, arms around my knees like some kid in a corner. That was my rock bottom. But something changed the next morning. I woke up, eyes crusty, head pounding, and walked into the kitchen to clean up the mess. As I picked up a crumpled flyer from the florist, I noticed something scribbled on the back in my handwriting. A to-do list from months ago, back when I was still excited about the wedding. Back when Emma was still including me. And at the bottom of the list, in big, hopeful letters, I had written, "Speech. Tell her how proud I am." I stared at that line for a long time. Because no matter how angry I was, it was still true. I was proud of her. I always had been. But pride wasn't the same thing as blind loyalty. Pride didn't mean I had to keep letting her walk over me. That's when I decided I was done begging for space in her life. I wasn't going to chase her. I wasn't going to keep trying to wedge myself into a celebration I clearly wasn't wanted at. But I was going to take my life back. I started with the wedding binder. I pulled it out of the kitchen drawer and dumped the whole thing on the table. Pages and receipts fluttered out, seating charts, meal preferences, vendor contracts, quotes. I spent the whole morning going through each one and making a list. Not of what I owed, but of what I controlled. Because here's the thing about being the one who pays for everything. Your name ends up on all the contracts. The venue, the catering company, the DJ, the florist, the valet, even the backup generator for the outdoor terrace in case of bad weather. All of it, under my name. And that meant I had more power than I realized. But I wasn't ready to use it. Not yet. Instead, I turned inward. For the first time in years, I started thinking about me. I took a few days off work. Not because I couldn't go in, but because I needed a break from pretending I was fine. I called in a favor from a buddy who owed me some time off the books, and I packed up Baxter and headed for the coast. Just me, the dog, and a rented cabin near the water. I brought no wedding stuff. No phone calls. No email. Just long walks. Fresh air. Mornings where I made real breakfast and watched the tide roll in. Nights where I actually slept. And slowly, I started to feel human again. It's amazing how much space you gain when you stop trying to win someone's approval. I started journaling again, something I hadn't done since Emma was in high school. Nothing dramatic, just thoughts, frustrations, gratitudes, things I hadn't made time for in years. I even met a couple staying in the cabin next door, Dave and Marlene, retired teachers who spent half the year traveling in an old RV. We ended up having drinks a few nights in a row, and one evening Marlene said something that stuck with me. You can't control how your kids turn out. You just have to control how you show up. That hit me hard, because I had been showing up, over and over, and it hadn't mattered. But maybe it wasn't about them anymore. Maybe it was about reclaiming what I'd given away. When I came back home a few days later, I was still angry, still hurt, but I was clearer. I had stopped spiraling, and I had started planning. The first thing I did was reread every vendor contract. I wanted to know exactly what my rights were. Turns out, I had more leverage than I thought. Most of the vendors still had the original date in their systems, June 10th. None of them had formal amendments on file for the new date. Some had been told there might be a change, but no one had signed anything official. Not the venue, not the DJ, not the catering crew. And since I was the one who signed the contracts, the one who made the payments, guess who had final say? I didn't make a move yet, but I started drafting emails. Polite, professional emails asking for confirmation, noting discrepancies, asking about cancellation windows, refund options, and rescheduling clauses. And then, right in the middle of this new wave of productivity, I got a text from Emma. Hey, sorry for being so distant lately. Been swamped with wedding stuff. Hope you're doing okay. Just wanted to check in and see if you're still okay covering the bar tab for the rehearsal dinner. I didn't reply. She sent another message 2 hours later. Also, did the string quartet send you their final invoice? They said they need payment by next Friday. Still nothing from me. She tried again the next day. Are you mad at me? And finally, I know we moved the date. I didn't tell you because I thought you'd make it a big deal. I just didn't want drama. I still want you there. Please don't ruin this. That word, ruin. As if I was the problem. As if I was the one being unreasonable. I sat with that message for a long time. Then I set my phone down, walked into the garage, and started a new project. I hadn't touched my personal tools in months. Everything had been for work. But now, I pulled out a raw slab of walnut I'd been saving for years. This beautiful, twisted piece with so much grain and personality. I ran my hands over it and pictured the coffee table I'd always wanted to build but never had the time for. Over the next few nights, I carved. I sanded. I forgot about Emma. Forgot about the wedding. Forgot about being hurt. All I heard was the hum of the sander and the rhythm of the grain. It felt good. Simple. Grounding. And slowly, the numbness began to lift. By the end of the week, I had a gorgeous, one-of-a-kind table sitting in my living room, and a growing sense of clarity. Emma might not value me as a father anymore, but I valued myself, and I wasn't going to let her, or anyone, treat me like I didn't matter. I had given her every opportunity to come clean, to show some decency. She hadn't. And now, the wedding was just 2 weeks away. 2 weeks until she arrived at a vineyard she assumed was still booked. 2 weeks until guests showed up expecting a party. 2 weeks until the entire illusion she'd built without me came crashing down. And me? I had a front row seat to all of it. 2 weeks. That's how long I had between the moment I stepped back into my house and the day Emma thought she'd be walking down the aisle. 2 weeks until she showed up to a venue I technically still controlled. 2 weeks until Colin's family, people who barely acknowledged me during this entire process, would be parading around, taking credit for a wedding they didn't pay for. 2 weeks until my daughter looked around and realized she had removed the one person who had made all of this even possible. I could have canceled everything right then. I had the power. One phone call, one email. I could have flipped the switch and let her deal with the chaos. But that would have been too easy, too quick. I wanted her to understand. Not just feel embarrassed, but really understand what she'd done. I wanted her to feel the weight of it all. And for that, I needed a little time. First thing I did was revisit every contract I'd signed. One by one. The venue? Fully refundable, minus the deposit. That was fine. I could eat the deposit. The important thing was that they still had the original date on file, June 10th. No one had officially amended the contract for May 27th, which meant I could cancel, and no one else had standing to stop me. The florist? Same thing. They'd only received a soft confirmation for the new date, never anything in writing. Still under my name. Still my account. Catering? Trickier. They had more advanced prep and shorter notice periods. But I'd paid for the upgraded menu, and as long as I canceled by the Monday before the wedding, I'd get back most of it. The string quartet was the easiest. I'd already emailed them the week prior, asking them to confirm the original June date. They replied saying they'd had some confusion with Emma and had decided to hold both dates open just in case. I thanked them for their patience and said I'd be in touch soon. In other words, everything was still on my terms. And the clock was ticking. At this point, Emma still hadn't directly apologized or explained anything. Just that vague, half-hearted text asking me not to ruin things. She never once said, "I'm sorry I changed the date without telling you." She never said, "Thank you for everything you've done." It was always, "Are you still paying for this? Did you send the deposit? Can you make sure the valet has extra hands?" No remorse. No ownership. Just assumption. So I decided to give her what she wanted for now. I sent a text, short and simple. "Hey, sorry for being distant. I've just been a little overwhelmed. Don't worry, I've got everything handled. Just focus on enjoying your big day." The read receipt popped up within seconds. And then, "Thank you, Dad. That really means a lot." She followed it up with a smiley face. I stared at it for a long time, then set my phone down and went back to work. Now that the ball was rolling, I needed help. Quiet help. So I called Janine. She's been my assistant for 5 years, smart as a whip, loyal to the bone, and always 5 steps ahead of everyone else. I trusted her like family. Probably more than most family, honestly. I told her everything. What had happened, what Emma had done, how I wanted to handle it. Janine didn't even blink. She just said, "Tell me what you need." We made a plan. She helped me draft a clean cancellation letter for each vendor. Not emotional. Not messy. Just, due to a change in family circumstances, we regretfully must cancel our booking for the original June 10th reservation. We didn't mention May 27th. We didn't mention Emma. Just kept it clean and tight. We staggered the cancellations. One every other day, slowly enough to not draw attention, but methodical enough that, by the end of the following week, everything would be off the books. The florist went first, then the DJ, then the catering. The venue was last. I was holding on to that one like a loaded weapon. Meanwhile, I made another move, something a little sneakier. I had Janine reach out to the venue coordinator as Derek's event manager, using a separate email account. She asked for a full rundown of the May 27th details, citing internal scheduling and saying we were reviewing all event overlaps. The coordinator, not sensing anything off, forwarded the entire updated itinerary that Emma had provided them. And that's when I saw the guest list. Over 150 names. None of them knew I wasn't invited. They had RSVP'd, assuming the father of the bride would be there, assuming I'd be making a toast, walking her down the aisle, standing by her side. The only one who knew the truth was Emma, and apparently, that had suited her just fine. For now, I sat with that for a while, wondered what her plan was. Was she just going to tell people I had a work conflict? That I was sick? Or was she hoping no one would ask? It didn't matter, because soon, the truth would speak for itself. I decided to make one final visit to the venue, just to see it again. Not for nostalgia, for closure. The estate was quiet when I pulled up. The gardens were in bloom, rows of soft lavender swaying in the breeze. I parked near the back, where deliveries usually come in, and walked the perimeter like I used to back when I was still excited. Back when I'd been mapping out where the bar would go, where the dance floor would sit, where I'd give the speech I never got to write. I stopped near the arbor, an elegant wooden arch draped in silk and ivy, now empty and waiting. It was supposed to be the spot where I'd walk her toward the rest of her life. Instead, I was walking away from the ruins of what we used to be. I turned to leave, and that's when I saw her. Emma. She was across the terrace with Colin, facing away from me. They were talking to the coordinator, pointing at things, nodding, laughing. It hit me like a brick. She looked happy. Not nervous. Not guilty. Not conflicted. Just happy. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like crying. I felt free. I walked away without saying a word. Back at home, I finalized the rest of the emails. Janine double-checked everything, confirmed refund schedules, and made sure all the contact info was scrubbed clean. The only thing left untouched was the venue. And then, right on cue, I got a text from Emma. Just wanted to say thank you again for handling everything. You really came through. Rehearsal's Friday night at 6 if you can make it. Totally understand if not. I didn't reply, because there wouldn't be a rehearsal. There wouldn't be a wedding. Not the one she thought, anyway. What she didn't realize, what none of them realized, was that you can't build something beautiful on a foundation of lies and expect it to stand. And when you treat people like tools, eventually, they stop working for you. She was about to learn that lesson in the harshest way possible. The morning of May 27th dawned crisp and clear. Birdsong filtered through my open window. Baxter, sensing something was different, paced near the front door with a nervous energy he hadn't shown in weeks. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, reading the paper, pretending it was just another Saturday. But it wasn't. Not for Emma. Not for Colin. Not for the 150 guests who would soon be on their way to a vineyard that no longer had a wedding scheduled. It was game day, and every move had already been played. I didn't need to lift a finger anymore. Everything was already in place. The venue had been canceled earlier in the week. The catering? Refunded. The florist? Off the books. DJ? Gone. Valet, rentals, waitstaff, chairs, bar service, linens, lighting crew, customized sculptures, all gone. Emma didn't know yet, because she never followed up with me directly about the contracts. She was so busy riding the wave of her perfect day that she'd stopped paying attention to the person who made it all possible. She assumed, like always, that everything was taken care of. That Dad will handle it. She just never stopped to consider what would happen if Dad decided not to. I got the first phone call at 10:17 a.m. It was from the venue coordinator. I let it ring out. At 10:25, a voicemail. Hi Derek, I'm so sorry to bother you, but we have a situation. There's a large group here, Emma's party, and they're saying today's the wedding, but we don't have them on the schedule anymore. I know you canceled earlier this week, and we confirmed it via email. Can you please call me? I smiled and took another sip of coffee. At 10:47 a.m., the first text from Emma. Dad, where are you? They're saying we don't have the venue anymore. Please call me. Right now. Then another, seconds later. What's going on? Why is nothing here? Where are the flowers? The food? The string quartet? Then, did you cancel everything? I didn't answer. Because what do you say to someone who's spent months treating you like you're invisible, only to suddenly remember you exist the moment their fantasy crumbles? By noon, the situation had gone nuclear. Janine, who was monitoring everything from her laptop at home, sent me screenshots from Facebook and Instagram. Posts were being deleted left and right. Comments were pouring in. What happened? We just drove an hour for this. No chairs, no music, no food. Is the wedding canceled? Someone said the father of the bride pulled the plug. We were told this was fully paid for. WTH is going on. Colin's aunt posted a photo of the empty courtyard with the caption, "Absolutely disgraceful. Never seen anything like this in my life." Then came the calls. Colin's mother called 3 times in a row, straight to voicemail. Colin's father left me a message laced with passive-aggressive calm. "Derek, we need to talk. I'm not sure what your intentions were here, but we need to resolve this immediately before lawyers get involved." Lawyers, of course, as if they had a leg to stand on. As if I hadn't followed every contract to the letter. As if I didn't have email confirmations, refund receipts, and signed cancellation notices. As if they had paid a dime for any of it. But the one call that hit me, truly hit me, came at 12:38 p.m. Emma. She didn't sound angry anymore. She sounded broken. "Dad?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know what happened. I don't know why you did this. I'm standing here in my dress. Everyone's looking at me like I'm crazy. Colin's mom is losing it. We have no food, no music, nothing. Did I do something so bad that you'd want to humiliate me like this?" I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to twist the knife, but because I knew there was nothing I could say in that moment that she was ready to hear. She needed to sit in it, feel it, understand it. By late afternoon, the guests had all left. Some quietly, awkwardly, others loudly, in outrage. One of Emma's bridesmaids posted a cryptic story about, "Not everyone deserves a happy ending." A cousin posted a selfie in front of the locked catering truck with the caption, "Guess we're doing McDonald's instead." I turned off my phone for the rest of the day. I took Baxter for a long walk, came home, grilled a steak, and watched an old Clint Eastwood movie. I slept better that night than I had in years. The fallout was exactly what you'd expect. Monday morning, Emma showed up at my house. She didn't knock. She banged. I opened the door, calm as could be. She looked ruined. Mascara still smudged under her eyes. Hair pulled back in a messy knot. She wasn't wearing the dress anymore, but she looked like she'd aged 5 years in 2 days. "Why?" she demanded. I stood aside. "You want to come in?" She hesitated, then walked past me into the living room. For a long time, she just stood there, staring at the half-finished walnut coffee table in the center of the room. Then she turned. "You could have just talked to me," she said. "You didn't have to sabotage everything." I nodded slowly. "You're right. I could have. But would you have listened?" Her jaw clenched. "You humiliated me." "No," I said quietly. "You humiliated yourself when you changed the date and didn't tell me. When you excluded me from everything but the bill. When you let your in-laws take credit for my money. That's what humiliated you." I just stopped pretending everything was okay. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't cry. "Not yet. I just wanted the day to be perfect," she said. "And you were being so intense about everything. You were hovering." I gave a bitter chuckle. "I wasn't hovering, Emma. I was involved. There's a difference." Silence. She looked down at her feet. "What do I tell people?" I shrugged. "That's your problem now." She swallowed hard. "Colin's family is furious. They'll get over it," I said. "Or they won't." More silence. And then finally, the question I'd been waiting for. "Do you hate me?" I looked at her for a long moment. "My daughter. My little girl. The one I used to carry on my shoulders through pumpkin patches. The one I stayed up with all night when she had the flu. The one who used to draw crayon hearts and tape them to my workbench. I don't hate you," I said. "But I don't trust you right now. And I don't know if I like the person you've become." That landed. Hard. She didn't argue. Didn't beg. Didn't apologize. She just nodded, eyes glassy, and walked out of my house. That was the last time we spoke for almost 4 months. She and Colin didn't reschedule the wedding. They eloped a few weeks later in a courthouse ceremony with just a few friends. No flowers. No music. No Instagram photos. Just a generic caption and a quiet announcement. I didn't attend. She didn't invite me. Colin's parents haven't spoken to me since. But I sleep just fine. Eventually, Emma reached back out. We started meeting for coffee every few weeks. Slowly, carefully. There are long silences between us now, spaces where laughter used to live. But at least she's trying. She never directly apologized. But one day, she handed me a small box. Inside was a wooden pocket watch I'd once admired at an antique store years ago. Engraved on the back were the words, "You were always there. I just stopped seeing you." And I guess that's the truth. I didn't ruin her wedding. She ruined our relationship. I just stopped paying for the privilege of being ignored. And I'll end with this. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge is simply removing yourself from someone's fantasy and watching the whole thing collapse without you.